Deborah, you've got a wonderful presentation about what the CDN, the Creative Diversity Network, are doing to help disability representation.
Okay, so if we can, where do I start? When I first came into this job 5 years ago, it was clear that there was an issue about disability in the industry. So what we decided to do was dig down and look at research. Creative Diversity Network, for people that don't know, we run Diamond, the monitoring system. So we collect the data of who's on television, who's makes television, and what people think they see in television in the UK. So all of our work is research based. So what we decided to do was the project called Doubling Disability, the aim of which was to double the percentage of disabled people in the off-screen roles from 4.5 to 9% as monitored through Diamond. So that was about giving people credits and making sure that they got a job at the end of any scheme that was created by an industry, our members. We interviewed executives, did a survey of disabled people, and we did some analysis of recruitment and how people recruit and retain disabled people. What was interesting was how, next slide, what was interesting was how we shared that information. So what we did was we got the findings, having worked with Cameo research team, and we made an animation. So that is on our website, that you can have a look at, the animation, which tells you exactly what you need to know, which is basically that the way to do it is to network, is to use third-party bridge organisations, incidentally, a bit like the Creative Diversity Network, work with us and do important, to employ disabled people, to have conversations about fear and anxiety and all of the things that came up. The project was for 2 years, and we were looking at how, next slide, we wanted to get an understanding of how far we travelled. The slide we have up now is a slide that came out of the fourth cut. We publish on an annual basis data, and the fourth was that from off-screen we moved from 5% to 5.8% in 4 years, and on-screen we moved from 6.2 to 8.2%. And the area of doubling disability was focusing on off-screen spaces and what off-screen looked like and how we were going to make that work. Next slide. So this is a beautiful diagram, and all of the reds you will see in disabled where urgent action is required. All of this came out of the fourth cut. That's from commissioning editor, director, producer director, writer, producer, executive producer, series producer, head of production. I could go on. We have 150 roles that we gather data on in Diamond, and every single one of them, the column. Elsewhere there are issues, but looking at disability, you can clearly see it is red, 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 red. Next slide. So what we then decided to do was, the commitment was for 2 years originally, so from 2018 to 2020. Obviously, the little thing called a pandemic got in the way of last year, so there was very little work and very little opportunity for disabled talent off screen. So what we've done is extended it by a year. But we wanted to have a sense check of whether or not we were heading in the right direction. So we appointed Dr. Marie Tidball and Catherine Bunting, who are independent as third-party consultants, and they did work for us, and they delivered when was it, in June this year, the interim report on doubling disability, which basically we did a thematic literature review, we interviews with disabled people about their career pathways, and also analysis of Diamond data. Next slide. Ultimately, it said that off-screen disability sat at 5.4% in 2020, where it started at 4.4%. So next slide. That's the stark reality. We'd moved 0.9%, not even 1% in a year, in 4 years. And if we carry on at this rate, it will be 2028 before we hit the target of 0.9%. Now, that's bad enough in and of itself. Next slide. If we continue completely and we look at the UK population of disabled people, which sits at 20% currently, it will be 2041 before we hit that 9% target at the rate we're going. Now, two things I want you to bring to your attention. The 20% is if nobody else becomes disabled or identifies as being disabled again for the next 20 years. So that's going to happen, right? We're going to stay where we are percentage-wise. And the second one is we are 5% above the global statistic for disability and disabled people. So the We Are 15 campaign that came out this week, supported by the Paralympic, the Paralympics and the UN, stated that 15% of the globe is disabled. The UK is already 5% above that population. So can you imagine what it's going to be like if we continue to work the way we're working and not employing and engaging with disabled people, and giving them credits for work that they've delivered? Next slide. So what came out of that were 44 recommendations. I just want to be clear about that. But what we're doing, the main themes of the interim report were about representation of disabled people in broadcasting. We wanted to know where we were. We wanted to have a look at attitudes, awareness and knowledge about disability, disabled people and working in the industry. And also, we wanted to accelerate, see where we could put more pressure on and learn from what was already being done around work with disability. Next slide. So the attitudes, CDN obviously are leading in the space, and we want to carry on leading in the space, but we can't do all 44 recommendations, A, in one go, and B, on our own. So what we are doing, what we highlighted is the things that we want to do and focus on first of all. So we're looking at the attitudes and recommendations. We're looking at specific training. We're looking at encouraging people to budget for access provision and training development, and consider that as part of professional development. Next slide. We're looking at reasonable adjustment and access to work, which is one of the unlocking that. I think everybody would agree that if we are able to unlock that, we'll be in a much better place and position than we have been before. Next slide. We then want to look at entry, recruitment and retention. Really want to look at retention and how disabled people can go up in the industry instead of out of the industry. Next slide. For us, that meant starting right here as the official accessibility sponsor for the Edinburgh TV Festival this year, and having conversations and hopefully building on the relationship that we've started this year and moving forward. There is a roadmap out there of those recommendations. Pick a recommendation, pick a bullet within a recommendation, and start laying the tracks, because we can't do it alone. The expectation is that everyone else needs to do it, and the statistics speak for themselves. The last thing I will say is if you don't, you've got no one but yourselves to blame. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. That was incredible, really.